everybody. This is Michael DeGioia with Dash Trader, and this is our #1 best trader competition for the fall swing trading competition. This is the week 2 review. And of course, my name is Michael DeGioia. I'm the Director of Educational Services and licensed professional here at Dash Trader. And I'm joined by my co-host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter from Nasdaq. Jill, how are you?
Good. Good to see everyone and excited about the competition.
Yes,
it's been a while.
Absolutely. But let's just jump into the news. So stocks gave up some of their gains earlier today, but certainly yesterday's rally is continuing to steam on a little bit, but it might be running out of a little bit of its steam going into the weekend. We ended up closing down about 400 points for the week, which is a down week. But what are your thoughts about this rally? Will it have legs, or is this just a bear market rally again?
I think yesterday when we got the CPI data where we were down 3% in the futures, only to close up 2%, a lot of that volume was ETF volume and not specific to stocks. So it sounds as if it was really around the indexes and not anything specific to the fundamentals of individual companies. So to your point, a lot of short covering and so forth. It was an interesting trade. And I spoke with a number of traders, as you know, Mike. I live with a Mike who's also been trading for 1,000 years like you have. And, you know, with the people within his community he was talking to, there were a lot of people who took significant positions into the print, whether on the short or long side, which I thought, I'm not sure if I would have done necessarily that strategy, because what happened was when you saw the moves that it made right after and how it jammed up, a lot of stops were hit. And then you saw, you know, you just kind of saw what had happened there, whether it was on the downside or the upside, depending on how you were positioned. If your stop got hit, only to see it reverse is incredibly painful. And I was really surprised to hear that sentiment. And a few traders, I think, that are trading on hopium, which is never a good strategy, whether the Fed is injecting liquidity and cutting rates, or whether it is raising rates and taking money out of the system. The Fed's going to Fed until it doesn't Fed anymore. And why we keep thinking it's going to reverse course when this particular Fed has been very clear, telegraphing its message, I think it's really hard to play against it. I mean, for decades, don't fight the Fed has always been the mantra. I don't know why people think it might be different this time around, because even if they were to get one inflation print or one employment print that shows that their strategy is working and we're seeing inflation come down and the economy slowing a bit, it doesn't sound like they're going to change course in the next, Fed meeting. So I'm really surprised to see how there's so much hope on what the Fed may or may not do when it hasn't changed its messaging.
That's something I never could fully understand. And, I've now been trading since 1998. So that puts me at 24 years. So I've been a trader for 24 years, and I could never understand the argument this time is different, because every single time I've heard this time is different, it wasn't any different. It may have been later, or it may have came sooner, but it never was different. There are certain economic principles that are just economic principles. And when the Fed is tightening up, monetary policy, monetary supply, there is just the market assets will lose value. Real estate will lose value. You cannot afford as big or expensive of a house if you cannot get credit to buy it. And these are just economic principles. It's just like gravity. You throw an apple up into the air, an apple falls down. Unless there's an anti-gravity drive attached to the apple, and that hasn't been discovered yet. But my point being is that there is nothing different about what's going on in the market. So normally we have very steep rallies in a bear market. And yes, we don't know the depth of what's going to happen next, right? But it seems to me that things got oversold to the downside. They got a little over bearish as of yesterday. And when things get over bearish, every single analyst was bearish after yesterday's CPI number. And then everybody was like, you know what, this is oversold, and people had to cover, right? Because, you know, if you were going into the day short yesterday, you're like, wow, I just made a boatload of money. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. You take your money and run. And I think a lot of what happened yesterday was short covering. And a lot of what happened was also the hopium stops got hit, which caused short covering and, you know, and caused some extreme volatility. Now, today was kind of a more subdued day, but we still ended with a down week. So to me, it makes total sense what you're saying. I'm surprised that people are putting on positions in the hope that this is a bottom, because picking a bottom has never been a good strategy in all 24 years of my my trading career. So on a different note, Britain rolls back some of the promised tax measures. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. You know, this is a U-turn. What's going on in England? I just have to ask you. I haven't been over across the pond in quite some time due to the pandemic, but what is your analysis as to what's going on in England? Because it seems to be an England-centric problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you think American politics is nutty, it could be, and challenging to figure out how our system works, it is probably even more difficult in the UK. So what happened was about 3 weeks ago, there was a tax policy that was announced in what's called a mini budget in the UK, right? So that created the volatility that we saw with the pound and kind of the shock waves that were sent through the financial system, because, you know, what happens in a big economy like the US or the UK, where so much global capital markets transactions take place, it will impact around the world. And that's why we saw all that kind of movement in the FX market and in the markets in general. So the reversal today, so, you know, this happened 3 weeks ago. The reversal today includes firing the finance prime minister, appointing a new one, while the prime minister Truss is trying to remain committed to her objective of spurring economic growth. Part of the issue was that these cuts that were proposed would not have been enough to cover other areas of the budget. And so that's kind of what created some of the turmoil. But what's interesting is the firing of the former finance prime minister really didn't lift the British pound, or really didn't advance gains that were made by government bonds. So I think it's more of a knee-jerk reaction with the markets, and from a political sense. Clearly, it was a humiliating decision for the former finance minister and for the current prime minister Truss, because her promise to cut taxes is what helped her win the leadership of the Conservative Party in the battle to succeed Boris Johnson as prime minister. So it's financial, it's political. It kind of goes against those campaign promises. Right. However, you know, this crisis really gathered pace. And, you know, she had to force her visit short to cut her visit short from Washington for talks at the International Monetary Fund, which was going on as well this week. So, you know, she's been in power for less than 6 weeks. And her approval ratings have just plummeted. So I'm not sure if this is the end of it, but it's quite stunning.
Yeah, no, it definitely was, you know, she'd ended up with a lot of egg on her face, so to speak. But we also know a little bit about, you know, a chief executive that has a very low approval rating. Certainly, we're dealing with one here in the U.S. as well. And we're going into a midterm election, which, you know, potentially could be a landslide for the Republicans if it wasn't for the fact that the Republicans have probably picked the worst candidates in history to potentially run against some of the Democrats. So it's like, there's a lot of political uncertainty abound, you know, all over the world, not just in England, but in the United States as well. we are about, I guess it's about 3 weeks, just under 3 weeks till election day. I think election day is on November 8th this year. And that certainly is going to weigh on the market. The other thing is that November 2nd is the last Fed meeting of the year, right? So we have one more Fed meeting, and it's literally 6 days before the before the election day, which is a major midterm election, which will decide who controls Congress. So that's going to be certainly a volatility event, which to me as a trader seems to indicate that although we are rallying at the moment, I'm going to be very, very cautious, with that big impending political change, as well as another Fed interest rate decision on the horizon. But I don't want to be too negative. I wanted us to jump into something that may actually be positive. I wanted to just touch upon and give a little update. Certainly, cryptocurrencies have rebounded a little bit. Bitcoin is creeping closer to 20K again. Ethereum had a really strong day today. Will crypto continue to trade with the technology sector, or will it show relative weakness again? What are your thoughts on crypto? I know you're going to some conferences, fintech conferences in the near future. So I know you stay really up on crypto. Tell me what your thoughts are on crypto.
The underlying technology that allows crypto to exist, blockchain technology, is what I am most excited about. The necessary movements in it is not really what I think will advance the sector, if you will. But again, we're traders, so we get what the market gives us. I don't think in the near term you will see the moves, getting close to 70,000 that we saw in the past. I think it will remain a volatile asset class because it still is very young. I don't think, we will see those massive moves like we saw in 2020 and 2021. Part of it is, and it's almost like you get what you wish for. There's been this massive push for institutional adoption, right, Mike? It's not necessarily the retail crowd that is controlling the momentum as much as it was before. So you have asset managers that are managing their positions as they would any other asset class. So you're going to see more of this range bound type of movement because you have institutions trading around it as if they would any other asset class.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be mindful of that, right? So it's almost like you could be a victim of your own success there.
Absolutely.
So you figure out the ranges like you would anything else, right? Like, how do you trade volatile tech stocks? How do you trade volatile biotech stocks? And you kind of, whether you're scalping or trading within your established ranges, that's what I think you're going to see. I think Bitcoin in particular, it still hasn't seen that decoupling that we're seeing, relative to the macro or to the indexes, particularly the Nasdaq 100. And that correlation certainly exists and it's pretty strong. So
Yeah.
I think you trade what the market gives you. And if I were to look in the crypto space, perhaps I would look at the technology stocks that are supporting the blockchain infrastructure. If you want to, think about it from an equity angle too. That's another opportunity that you can use.
I have a question, and this is just we're a couple of months out now, or at least more than 6 weeks out from Ethereum 2.0. How did you feel about the Ethereum, rollout to Ethereum 2.0? I've heard mixed things about Ethereum and the new version of Ethereum. Like, it's not a mining model; it's a different model now. What did it go smoothly? Did it have any effect? I mean, Ethereum really had a very strong day today, but obviously one day does not make a trend. What are your thoughts on Ethereum, versus Bitcoin? Bitcoin being the mainstay, whereas Ethereum, and then obviously you have I don't want to refer to them as shit coins, but there's all these other various coins out there that are not quite so widely adopted. So what is your thought of that three parts of the crypto space?
Right. So the Ethereum merge was successful. There's no doubt with that. It was long awaited. The merge saw this particular blockchain network move from its proof of work model to the more environmentally friendly proof of stake model, which cut down, its carbon footprint by 99.9%, which results in faster transactions and lower fees. And that's a good thing.
Less environmental damage, less
and that has always
used.
been the issue with Ethereum and some of the other ones. So it was successful at the end of the day. So you have to ask yourself, well, what are some of the benefits of it? The Ethereum blockchain, that's where you see a lot of your NFTs are being built. You'll start to see NFT transaction fees decline. And that kind of, then you have the global energy crisis and climate change. You have that narrative that's been satisfied there. It also decreases the total Ethereum supply in the long run, which can potentially make it more profitable for long
More valuable potentially,
right?
yeah.
Because there's not as much that's out there. It's basic supply and demand. And again, I think because you're seeing so much institutional adoption here, you're not going to see those massive moves that we did. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's going to continue to be more range bound here. But I think for the crypto industry overall, it's starting to mature technologically. It's starting to mature from an ideological perspective when you think about the carbon footprint, legally and regulatory, that's going to take some time. But I think for longer term holders, you're going to see less liquidation. You'll see less volatility in the long run. And I think that will help to engage investors, and because you're also starting to hear a lot about wealth managers and registered investment advisors trying to figure out ways to get clients exposure. So I think as it matures, that's a good thing. But crypto is not blockchain, and sometimes these things are used synonymously when blockchain can be used with any vertical, any industry, anything that requires supply chain, logistics, data management. I just think that crypto and Bitcoin were associated with blockchain before we saw all these other use cases.
Yeah. So just for our viewers, blockchain is a technology that basically duplicates the entire ledger or the entire history of the ledger of all the transactions, all the elements that went into it in each time that it replicates itself. So I guess that would be what we're talking about when we say blockchain. Crypto is obviously is the currency portion of it, that it has certain elements of privacy, and that's the other part is that they are two separate items. You have blockchain technology, which is really an accounting, ledger, logistics technology, versus what we call crypto, which is private transactions like a currency. And I think you're right. They get lumped together and we say cryptocurrency and blockchain, but they're two separate items. But great point. Really, really great point. So let's jump into the number one best trader competition. So we have, this is for the week of October 10th through the 14th, and we certainly had a roller coaster of a week. We have a best 1017 is our big winner. He or she is in the number one spot with today's gains. I mean, this is just astronomical. I mean, it's $19,607, which means that they were 4,000 negative going into today. So this is like a huge reversal from last week. This is a person who took the lead today. That is best 1017. Today's gains 19,607, bringing them positive in terms of total gains. We had the number one trader from last week has dropped to number 5, which is best 1010 from the Global Bolsa Group. They lost 1,410 today, putting them down at 2,485. Now, what I do notice here, Jill, is that we have everybody is positive as far as total gains. So we are certainly seeing some big winners. We have best 1015 with 4,000 in profit today, bringing them to 10,393, and best 1024 at 7,208, which is, obviously, again, a pretty significant amount of gains as well, taking in 1, 2, and 3 top positions. So any observations that you'd like to point out before we jump into the symbols?
I think it's great to see that people had gains in what's been a very challenging week. Certainly for professionals, as we spoke about at the top, but this is, and it goes to what we saw on Thursday. These massive reversals are still taking place in the market, and until we get more, normality within it, I think we're going to continue to see that. But this is really quite impressive to see how virtually everyone is in the green.
Yeah, and this is a swing trading competition, so people are holding overnight. This is not just day trading. That means that people took positions because, number one position was won today. Probably best 10, 15 was in the number one position going into today. And like I said, number 5 dropped, was in number 1 last week and dropped down to number 5. So we've got a pretty big flip in terms of the standings going into this week.
Yeah, super impressive. Well done, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much. And everybody, kudos to you. So these were the top 5 stocks traded, which certainly I don't with the exception of Plug and Neo, which we've seen quite a few times in other competitions. These other ones are fairly low price stocks, at 54 cents, which is FNHC. ATXI is $3.38, and LASE is a $4.76 stock. But Neo and Plug, how many times have you and I seen Neo and Plug on there?
A lot, and I certainly don't think it's going to be the last time.
No, absolutely
not for a long time.
Yeah. Also, we have obviously the QQQ, we have CVX, we have Tesla, ExxonMobil, DWAC, DAL, our old standby, AMD, we have WFC, these are all AAL, which is American Airlines, the TQQQ, which is I believe that's the long QQQ. I know we had SQQQ doing the closing bell yesterday. So certainly we have a lot of symbols that we are familiar with, in the most traded symbols. No big surprises there. Anything that you'd like to point out, Jill, before I jump to the charts?
And I do. We actually yesterday we had not SQQQ, but we had the next gen 200 ETF, which means the next 200 stocks beyond the Nasdaq 100. So for anyone who's looking for potentially that next growth trade or stocks that have a little bit more movement in it, that you could probably farm out some cool names in there.
What is the symbol for the Nasdaq 200 after the Nasdaq 100? Next 200
it is QQQS.
Oh, QQQS is the one that is the next 200 shares. Next 200 companies.
Yep. Yeah, so it's a cool one to watch.
That's from Invesco, correct? It
is from Invesco. And what's really cool about it is these are companies that were recently rewarded patents on their technologies. So, you never know. There could be a hidden apple in there. You never know.
That's really, really cool. I was wondering what that was. I thought QQQS was like QQQQ short, but I think that's the QQQQ, TQQQ is the one that goes short, isn't it?
It's
or S.
Yeah, there's so many of them.
I know, right? We'll just look it up and we'll figure it out. Okay. But thank you so much for being here with us, Jill. We'll see you next week, and till next week.
Awesome. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend, Jill. All right, I'm going to just switch over to my charts. Just give me one moment. Just restarting my Dash Trader. So lately, I have been favoring the blue layout on Dash Trader. Now you have 3 layout options. You can go with night, which is black. You can go with day, which is white or silver, and then certainly you can go with blue, which is what I've been favoring lately. I'm just going to bring up the 15-minute chart of the of the S&P. So we had a huge run up, and then we've had a pretty steep reversal, right? So that's not uncommon. This is a bullish counterattack, and then this is a bearish counterattack. And notice how we've come back to what is the point of control. I just want to show you this from a perspective of the markets. Pretty much the market gapped up, faded the gap, and then crapped out. And of course, we've come back to what seems to be the right level now for us to close the week, which is at the 50% retracement line of yesterday's really massive short squeeze. And again, I'd like to stress that this is not uncommon when a market is potentially putting in a short-term bottom, or it has had a significantly long bear market. You can get this kind of volatility. That is on the this is on the SPY, but I'm going to bring up the QQQ. So let's take a look at the QQQ. Okay, here's the QQQ. Pretty much the same story, except this one is a 60% retracement. So the QQQ continues to be a little bit more bearish, a little bit more accentuated than the Nasdaq. I'm going to bring up Apple because, like I said, very often in the past, so goes Apple, so goes the market. Apple has a low and then a higher low. So certainly Apple, is rebounding to the upside, and potentially, it has a low and then a higher low. That's usually a little bit of a bullish inclination. But we will see how Apple continues to level out here. I'm going to jump to some of the stocks that were in the #1 best trader competition. We're going to look at just if I can just see what the name of that one is FNHC. FNHC. This was a really low price stock. Now, it did happen to meet the volume criteria because it has been up on very heavy volume, even though it's below the normal price criteria, but because it has had some very heavy volume activity, stock broke away from, a 20 to 35 cent trading range, and it traded up into 62 cents today. So certainly this stock, made a nice pop, and I believe that's probably the reason why one of our traders took the lead. It looked like that was the stock that he or she was trading. Next one is ATXI. Again, these are these one-hit wonders that we always see in the #1 best trader competition. So, this is a stock that was up, pretty much all week, and then it fell back to earth today. So if you were short this stock, fantastic, because it got crushed. Was $15 at the beginning of the week. Now it's $3.30. So that stock got completely obliterated. The next one is LASE. Again, this stock just broke away and has moved higher because this is a swing trading competition. If you had acquired a position anywhere in the last 2 weeks, you went from $2.50 to $5.13. It's a tremendous percentage move. The next one is NEO. This is really a trading stock. So I would guess that this one was, it closed at the low of the day on NEO, very big bearish engulfing bar. I believe this is an electric car manufacturer in China, but don't hold me to that. It's a very actively traded stock. And then the last one, which is Plug Power Energy. This is an alternative energy company. I believe they make batteries, but again, they have a whole array of different energy-related technologies. This one also very actively traded and certainly filling a gap that it had on the chart, but it was a big move up yesterday, and then a pretty big rejection. It basically moved $1 in the course of today's trading. So lots of activity there. I'm going to very quickly go back to our charts one more time. Just going to move back to, actually, before I go to the charts one more time, I want to just talk a little bit about GBTC. GBTC, this is Bitcoin. We were talking about Bitcoin today. Certainly, kind of moved with the market. It faded a little bit today. ETHE, which is Ethereum, did pretty much the same thing. This is a bullish counterattack and then followed by a bearish counterattack. Notice that it's kind of just gravitating right there in the middle. Last but not least, I'm just going to go to XOM. We saw that being traded. Certainly oil looks like it's forming a bull flag formation and might be breaking out to the upside. So we might be seeing more of XOM in the near future, the competition. AMD, just big downtrend. The chip sector is really taking it on the chin. I think Intel had some negative news about closing a facility or something, or cutting back employees actually. But they had a big day up yesterday, and then of course it gave back a little bit of the gains today. And finally, Microsoft, very similar to everything else. Big day yesterday, giving back some of the gains today. Tesla certainly had a very big bearish engulfing bar today. So that one is looking really, really negative. That has broken key support and it closed at the low. This was a stock that was staying up relatively strong while the rest of the market was going down. So Tesla looking fairly negative, going into the next week of the competition. So on that note, I'm going to just do one more switch back to finish things up and just talk a little bit to you all, our competitors. So to our competitors, I just suggest that you review your strategy. There is nothing too late. The strategy is the competition is still anybody's game. We are at the halfway point of the competition. Whatever you've been doing, has it been successful? Have you made any trade mistakes? What have you learned? If you have any additional comments or things you'd like to see in the competition overviews or market news, certainly email us at info@onebesttrader.com. Just fall swing trading competition. It runs through to October 28th. You can get all the rules on the competition at onebesttrader.com. Follow us on social media at OneBestTrader on Twitter, Facebook, and certainly Instagram. I thank everybody for joining me here today on the live stream. My name is Michael DeGioia. I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great weekend, everybody, and good luck in the competition. Good night.